Hi, I'm Kathy Colbenson. I'm President and CEO of CHRIS 180, and in celebration of our 40 years of service, I'm honored to sit down with three of CHRIS 180's founding members. They represent the women of the Junior League of Atlanta, an organization of more than 2,000 Atlanta women committed to volunteerism and improving the community. We have Ann Cramer, Bobbi Cleveland, and Alice Ball with me. And they represent a committed group of women who've made a huge impact, creating CHRIS 180 to fill a tremendous gap in services. So I'm just delighted to be with the three of you today. So I wanted to ask a first question to each one of you. CHRIS 180 started in June of 1981 as Georgia CHARLEE, which stood for Children Have All Rights, Legal, Educational, and Emotional. And I'd love for each of you to tell me about the inspiration that led you and the Atlanta Junior League to get involved in this great project.
I'll start since the beginning was our Junior League's community research group. And at the time, we were so concerned about children who were wards of the state, foster children, who were literally getting tossed around from home to home. And we found Jewel Norman was the chair, and as you will know, she was our first executive director for CHARLEE. We found this program with the Miniger Foundation in Kansas, where the intent was to find some stable, normalized home situation for these children with family care parents in safe neighborhoods with neighborhood schools, accessible and affordable and ready for the children to look like normal kids.
I really applaud the board for, instead of thinking, well, we're just going to build this from scratch and do it ourselves, really looking around the country to find who is doing it well, having an impact, and then bringing them here into Atlanta, tailoring it to meet the needs of Georgia, but rather than starting from scratch, really look to best practice and went from there.
I moved to Atlanta at the time that the league was beginning to look at this program, and chanced to meet Ann Cramer, who had heard of me from my illustrious past and asked me to read the proposal that was going to the membership for a vote. I was in tears by the end of it because I was a former social worker and had dealt with the pain and the trauma of the children who were moved from home to home to home and never got well and never really became who they could be. And so I was kind of all in before I even got into the league very much here. And it's been my pleasure all along to watch how this has grown and lived into a dream that I had always had for children and that I still have, that they're in a home where they're wanted and they can't get kicked out.
As we mentioned, the whole idea is to have a home, a house, a place for these children to live with the family care parents as if they are a real family. So we set out to find a house. Well, finding a house wasn't so hard because we had a certain criteria. The criteria was a nice house with room for the family, a yard in a nice neighborhood that had great neighborhood schools, that was affordable and accessible. But some of the neighbors were not so happy. And so Sue Wieland and I, this is when you think about, we were really crazy. Sue Wieland and I went out and we would have meetings in homes with the neighbors. And it occurred to us that not everyone, like Alice, adored these angel foster children. And in explaining to these neighbors that these are precious children, just like ours, the only problem is that their parents at this time were not able to care for them. And what we wanted for every child was to have a safe place to live.
What we haven't really addressed, I think, is as important, is the role it has played in really lifting up the whole ecosystem of child welfare in this state.
Yes.
By training not only your own staff, but providing training for the staff of other providers. By addressing public policy at the state level, both in working with the DFACs and the other departments, as well as the legislature, in getting better funding, but also better policy to really support organizations, not just Chris 180, but other organizations serving these young people. And so that's just as important as building the organization itself.
Yep.
And I would add to that, it's about caring for the child, but it's also caring about the child and his or her family.
Absolutely.
Kids belong with their families. Kathy has clearly been the driving force and the leader, but she was smart enough to know an executive director of an organization cannot by themselves be successful over the long term. So it's always a both and. You can't have a good program and not a strong board and organization, or vice versa. You were the very first person who really introduced me, and I think others, the whole concept of adverse child experiences, ACEs, and the trauma-informed response needed to work with these kids and help them work through these challenges. And you have remained that way. Chris 180 has grown as the field has grown, as the field of addressing the mental health needs of adolescents. And I think that's why you've been so impactful, so successful, and why this community continues and hopefully will continue to support you.
Chris 180 would not exist without the women of the Junior League of Atlanta. And as we celebrate our 40th anniversary, we thank them. Volunteers of all ages and backgrounds who continue to lift up our work to heal children, strengthen families, and build community. Thank you to each of you and to all the women of the Junior League of Atlanta for your commitment to the work of Chris 180. Thank you.